Pia Britto, thank you for sitting down with me. Could you just present yourself?
My pleasure. I'm Pia Britto, as you said. I grew up in India, and then now I live in the United States. I work at UNICEF, which is the UN Children's Organization, and I am the global lead for early childhood development.
What do we know about the importance of early childhood development today?
The one thing I think that is markedly different is we know now that early potential is there right from the start. It's not just when the child starts moving and talking. It's not just when the child starts engaging. It actually is going on from the beginning. And what we know is in those first moments, if we start to provide what the baby needs, what the infant needs, it's already taking shape. It's already making a difference because the brain is a sponge and it's just, it's experience dependent, which means it needs experiences. It's always looking for something. We didn't know that before. We thought the baby sleeps, the baby wakes up, the baby eats, the baby poops, In between all of that, there's so much going on to promote development. And the beauty about early childhood is it's not just one person and another person, but it's the interaction between the two people. That's really what brings out the essence of who we become. Because when we interact with others in a positive way and we receive so much warmth and love and affection and stimulation and enrichment is when we start to develop our sense of self, develop our thinking, our language.
How important is play in the early years of a child's life?
Play is how children learn. And play isn't just one kind of play. There are many types of play. And play is something that progresses. Younger children may play alone a little bit, and then you see as they get older, they play with others. And they play with others maybe just mimicking others. Then they play with others, interacting with others. But what play does is it's the way children learn because they experiment, they innovate, they keep trying things back and forth. And all of that is teaching them life lessons. When they play by throwing something down and picking it up, they're learning gravity. They're learning the permanence of something stays. When they play with friends, they learn social relationships. And now we're seeing a lot about the role of play in also calming children in situations of conflict, because play is so normal in what they do that it buffers them from all the turbulence in the world around them and allows them that moment to just engage in being there and just engage in those interactions and the way it comes most naturally. Play is very powerful, it's underestimated, and it's thought to be sort of almost just for too childish. One thing that's very, very important in interactions are words, especially words between an adult and a child. Because every time you engage mutually with a child and you have words and lullabies and songs and stories, they keep forming connections in the brain. And I think now we are slowly starting to see, for example, just for young children growing up in different economic contexts. We've seen some work coming out of the United States that shows that 3-year-old children who are raised in highly educated homes and not so well educated homes, there's almost a 30 million word gap in the number of words and the types of words they hear. It's the same thing with play. Now that we're studying it, we see how important it is for so many aspects of development, but I think we just took it for granted.
If you look at the gains for society as a whole in the long run, if you could promote this early childhood development in a better way, what do we gain?
Wow, that's a good question because there's so much to gain. There's a lot to gain individually. There's a lot to gain in just becoming who we are and the ability to achieve our potential, which is our basic right. And then there are gains for the family because the interactions within the family start to grow. There are gains where we see greater cohesion, greater sort of harmony. There are gains for society because there are fewer children left behind. There are gains for society because there's a reduction in inequity. There are gains for society in reduced violence and crime. There are gains for more inclusive economic development, because we see more social mobility. There are gains for especially girls and women, because when we provide early childhood services, firstly, the older sibling sister can go back to school. She doesn't have to be home taking care of her younger brothers and sisters. We see for young mothers, there's a lot of gains while their children are being taken care of. They're able to earn an income, they're able to economically advance. I mean, just every facet of it. And the neat thing is, it's all studied and there's research behind it all. That's really, really the fascinating part. But getting the political commitment for it is difficult. Just getting political commitment to invest for young children is really difficult. I think it's not an immediate return.
If you could meet with most of them actually male leaders of the world to promote those questions, what would you say?
In meeting most leaders of the world, it's interesting when you talk about early childhood, a lot of the initial reactions first go to their own role, maybe as a parent they've had. And you see some degree of self-reflection, which is really nice, because then you realize it's a universal issue. It's not an issue of just those people out there. It's an issue that speaks to all of us. And then I think it's an issue of really speaking about, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. And you know, we start the argument by saying it's the right thing, it's the rights of children, but then when you come to it's a smart thing to do, and you're able to present the economic evidence and inclusive economic and social growth and reduction of violence, that's when you start to see a response. The most response I've seen around early childhood is when you start to talk about the developing brain. That's something that knowledge is so fascinating. It captivates policymakers, and they listen, because I think there's something so both universal but also unique about it. It's sort of like looking inside yourself and looking inside this and saying, wow.
Seeing the potential.
Yes,
of the individual.
Yeah.
What are UNICEF's priorities in the field of early childhood development?
UNICEF has sort of one set of priorities is around getting the measurement right and getting the data platforms correct, so that we are with great accuracy able to say who is getting, how well are we doing by the youngest children of the world. You know, we want to be able to answer that question. The second priority is of equity, and how well are we doing for the most disadvantaged and the most vulnerable children. What do we have in place in the scattered communities, in the far-flung communities, for refugee children? That's our second priority. How are we doing that well? And then, are we building the capacity of the workforce that serves families and children to get it right? Do we have the adequate and right investments in place? Investments that governments make in their policies and programs, investments that families make, investments that communities make. Are we making the right investments by children to be able to foster that? And then to work in partnership, because we don't quite do this, no one does this alone. We really need strong partnerships with communities, with families, with key stakeholders, with governments, with academia, with media, with philanthropy. We really need this partnership, this coalition, to almost create a movement that recognizes that every child should have the best chance to life right from the start, and that every second counts for every child. You know, that advocacy is sort of what we want to get moving. So in the end, because every parent wants the best for their child, the demand will pick it up, and we will see a change occur.